Okay, so here we are, day 30 of this really amazing Men in Recovery project. It's been amazing for me. Hopefully those of you watching it have also appreciated it and gotten something out of it. It's been a wonderful experience for me to connect with men that I've known in different ways. And I'm really, really pleased to be ending this month and this project with a new friend who is more than a friend. He is really the first man that I've met who is so dialed into this mission that I have felt called to do, that he really feels like a spiritual brother in many ways. And so Matt Burton, really, really pleased and wonderful to have you with me.
I'm excited. And we are hanging out, aren't we? So that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's good.
It's only when it's only you, right? So
yeah, it's nice to have found each other, and you're just doing such amazing work and being so thoughtful about it. And we can tell a little bit about that, because I'd like to. But really today in our conversation is really thinking about, because this is National Recovery Month and it's winding down. And it's really this question of, what is the greatest gift that recovery has given you to help you be the man you always knew you could be?
That's a great question. And I appreciate you telling me the question in advance so I can think about it a little bit. So for me, the greatest gift that it's given me as a man, or just in general, is a gift of finding out who I am as a person. So trauma and addiction and all of that really takes those things away. And so the opportunity to slowly but surely be on this road of, I guess you'd call it wellness. Samson talks about the 8 dimensions of whole person wellness. And for me, there's the addiction part happened in 1992, happened pretty quickly, but the trauma recovery and the reasons why I was using what I was using to not deal with my life is really where the road's at. Right. So you got to stay sober to stay on the road. At least it helps anyway. But that's really what it's been for me, is to get myself back and figure out who is Matt Burton, and, why did God create me, and what does he want me to do? And I feel, that I'm numb to that if I can't be sober and to be able to, figure that out slowly but surely. So.
Awesome. And what's interesting in this week specifically, the men that I've been interviewing have all had very similar responses. And I think that's very interesting. And I think it's very powerful, because it really is such an essential part of this journey. So can you tell me a little bit more about, so what has that given you? So you've gotten yourself back. So what has that meant for you in your life? So
lots of things, but I can just talk about even this week. When the single biggest, I had a couple of major events that happened that were a big deal for me, that you know about already, which is in 1992, I actually read in a book that I was a sex abuse survivor. I didn't know I was. And so I read it in Wendy Malt's Sexual Healing Journey. She talked about, and I read it and I go, wow, I was a survivor. I just thought that something bad happened to me, or I did something bad. And so that was the beginning of getting those pieces together. And then as she said, you need to abstain from certain things to walk through your healing process, and I couldn't. Then I found out I was an addict. Right? So, and then 1992 on, I've been in the 12 steps and been in abuse recovery. So that's been a focus for me specifically. So 1992 was a big deal. 2009 was a big deal. And in 2009 is when I went through the empty chair process. And I think you and I have talked about that, where in counseling, I went back to counseling to figure out why my life wasn't going better. So I still wasn't finding the success I was hoping for. And this was all based on recovery and healing and starting helping men heal and, all these things I was doing, but it wasn't kind of going. And so I thought, there's something that's going to be. So I went into counseling, and he identified 6 traumas that I'd experienced that were holding me back. And so we took a whole year and walked through that process, and we did the empty chair. And the empty chair is where there's a chair that I'm sitting in, say you're the counselor, and there's an empty chair. And that empty chair represents the person who traumatized you. And then you go back to when you were the age that you were abused or traumatized, and you pretend that person's there, and you basically talk to them and process it. And then at the end, I wrote letters of forgiveness to all those people. And and then as you know, I memorialized some of that stuff. But the biggest letter that I wrote, two of the most impactful letters, one was to Grace, and you know about that. The second was to God, to forgive him, and the third is to forgive myself. Right? And when I did those things, it was like this huge weight went away, and then Burton could come back. There could be more of me, right? Instead of drowning in all the craziness that I had experienced. So it's a long answer, but that's what I got.
No, it's a wonderful answer. And, a big part of our mission is about trying to normalize the conversation. Well, not even you can't normalize something that's not even a conversation in larger society yet. Right? So we're trying to bring out to our society this conversation and then normalize this idea of men who experience trauma and helping men see, like you said, you didn't know it until you're in that book. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about Grace, if you would, because so many men have experiences that we just tell ourselves don't matter.
Sure.
Or other people tell us, they don't matter. They're not significant. It's not significant for you because you're a guy and blah, blah, whatever. And this was really powerful for me talking to you as you got to grieve this, but as you also got to own the significant impact of that experience.
Sure. So one of the 6 traumas that I had that was identified by the counselor, I didn't feel like was a trauma. So this one was one that I didn't own this one. I just thought it's not the case. So back in 1992, I got a girl pregnant that had an abortion. So, and for me, she didn't want to keep the baby, all that kind of stuff. I said, geez, I'll take care of it. She said no. And I have no rights there, right? I mean, it's her body, all that. And so she chose to do that. And I just kind of forgot about it. But not only did I chose to forget about it, all my addictions exploded then. That was like the beginning of me starting to get into recovery, is because everything that I could numb myself out after that experience, I tried to, and it didn't work. And so in 2009, the counselor that I was seeing happened to be an expert on males who've gone through the abortion experience with their partner, whoever that partner was, but he was on the men's healing side of it. And so it was the last thing that I did with him, because I didn't think it was a trauma. Because I said, hey, I'm not the one who was pushing it, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm good, right? I'm off the hook. But what he did that brought it to me is he told me, and one of the things I want to say, because I get asked about sometimes, is that I'm saying it was a trauma for me. Some people don't believe that abortion's traumatic. And I'm not a clinician, I'm a survivor. So I'm not saying it is or it isn't, I'm just saying it was traumatic for me, right? But in light of that, I just couldn't feel it. And I have kids. And he said, well, think about, putting your son or your daughter on the bus for the first time. All those life experiences. I've got a daughter who I've married off and all that stuff. So all these he said, that's what you missed. And that's what made it real for me. That those are all the things I didn't get, right? I didn't get to do because she didn't come out, right? So, and he also asked me, I say she, because he asked me if I thought there was a gender connected to it. And of course I can never prove that, right? Because you can't, but I really felt not only there's a gender, but there was a name, which was the name Grace Elizabeth. So I memorialized that unborn baby in a memorial site that was specific for that kind of thing. And in some ways that birthed all the work that I'm doing now. So, and of course your daughter's name is Grace. And so there was a natural connection there. So anyway, so that's the story there.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful story, because I think so many men live in that space of telling themselves, I don't have trauma. Or if they begin that journey, they begin to decide what isn't trauma. Sure. And what's so powerful is also what you said is, look, this was trauma for me. This clinician helped me see how this had impacted me. Yeah. That may or may not be the case for somebody else. Yeah. And that's huge. That's very, very important when we talk about trauma.
Yeah.
However, it's so important that those of us men who understand the power of that loss, who understand the various experiences that we've had and understand the impact, the traumatic impact of those, that we do get to share our story, that we do let other men and women hear that this was our experience, because that might give another man permission to acknowledge that pain in his life. And so it's as we begin, what I love is that you think of trauma and you think of loss, and men carry so much loss in their lives and aren't allowed to grieve that loss so often. And so it's been such a powerful part of your work, and a great modeling for me of that level of vulnerability and transparency. And, you're a father, you're a husband, you've got a mission in the world. Talk a little bit about how the man that you are is really kind of being grown in those experiences.
Sure. And the third letter that I wrote to finish the story was to her, to Grace, asking for her to forgive me for what and that was a hard letter. Right. I come from media. I come from being an on-air personality. So I come from media and sports. So I've always kind of been out front. But when I got into recovery and healing, I took myself out of that and just started doing regular work and regular jobs and stuff, but always been an entrepreneur and always been, one that would share. And so my recovery story is that I would go and seek recovery. I'd read any book I could. I'd do anything I could, go to any counselor I could. I would get better. And then of the 10 things the counselor told me to do, 3 of them would work for me. I'm not saying that all 10 of them don't work. All 10 of them didn't work for me. I'd take those 3 and I'd tell people that I knew were struggling with the same thing about what worked for me. And then they would share that with their friends. And so I turned around 20 years later in 2012, and there were hundreds of specifically men that were getting better. And all I was doing was sharing with them what helped me because I was willing to share, right? And so a good friend and spiritual director and mentor of mine said, Matt, you know how to build companies. Why don't you, as a social entrepreneur, why don't you build an organization that can help a lot more people than you can help by yourself? And so we started helping men heal in 2012 based on, it started out as my traumas, but this has never been about me. So very quickly we said, no, this is trauma and loss. And the reason why it went to men was because I choose to pour into men's lives because I have a wife and other things, and just didn't feel like it was appropriate for me to have women who had experienced trauma emotionally sharing with me, right? Because there's things that come with that, and so I just thought, boundary. I'll help them with my wife. I'll help them. I'll point them, but I'm not the one that's going to walk them through anything to the best of my ability. So we started helping men heal, and now that organization is starting to grow and to partner with other folks, we're working on some stuff together. So starting to focus on working with other people that are trying to do what we're doing so that we can help men and their families and everybody connected to them to get better. So that's what I'm doing. That's what we're doing. And because I'm a social entrepreneur, it doesn't matter if it's for-profit or nonprofit. I don't really care. Whatever's the best funding mechanism to get to the end to help people. Right. So that's how we've done that.
That's awesome. And, so that's really you living that mission, that kind of, because you said in being able to find yourself, it was also, so where does God, where does life, where does the universe, the creator, however people define it, where are you feeling driven? Where are you feeling pointed toward? What are you feeling pointed toward? And I've spoken with a lot of men this month about the power of purpose, the power of having a mission, of being of service, how important that is. Talk about a little bit, if you would, the difference between being of service outside in the world versus being of service to your family. I think men struggle a lot of the times with the balance, but I know how dedicated and devoted you are to your personal healing, to being a father and a spouse who's present, in addition to this other purpose and mission.
Sure. So, I've been in 12 steps since 1992. I call into, or I'm a part of almost one meeting a day, 12-step meeting a day, whether it be on the phone or in person. So I do that. I'm currently rereading Codependent No More. I'm currently reading a book on solitude and silence. I have a spiritual director who helps me slow down to hear God. So I have an entire team. I have an ADD coach, guys. I have an ADD to help me, work through, me and, how I can't organize my little life. And so I have this team of people that help me to navigate my life and be healthy. And then, so I try to focus on that, but I also try to focus on how, my calling in this world is to help people be who God's called them to be. It's that simple. So, but I have to start with me, and then I have to say, who has He called my family to be, and what's my job to be? My wife be who she's supposed to be, which isn't going to have to be connected to me, right? So it's nice that but my wife is somebody without me. So my job is to help her. My pastor said one time that when you get to heaven, He's only going to ask you, the first question He's going to ask you is your wife more beautiful than when I brought her to you? He said, you better be able to answer that question. And that's a high pressure question, man. So for me, it's pouring into those people that I'm directly responsible to engage in their lives and make sure they're moving forward and are healthy, finding wellness and health. And then after that, if there's anything left, then I also need to do that same thing with others, right? So I try to focus on my recovery and healing, and then focus on caring for my family. One way I do that is I turn my phone off at 6 p.m. for work. I don't work on the weekends, and I've got a lot going on. But my family is the most important, right? God, family, everything else. Those are my priorities. So
awesome. And well, so like I said, it's really special for me that I can end this project interviewing you and then another gentleman that I interviewed that has meaning for me. I really honor the work that you're doing. You're teaching me a lot. You're modeling for me a lot about that balance, about self-care, about the work that I still have the opportunity to do for myself, and particularly so I can be available for the mission that I feel called to do and live. So I want to thank you for that. And I always ask my guests to have the last word. So with that in mind, take us home.
Sure. So thank you, Dan, for what you're doing. And I'm excited about the work you're doing. And it's nice to be connected to other people, right, in doing this work. So appreciate that. And it's just about, I think at the end of the day, recovery and healing is about never stop working on trying to be more well. And there's a lot of ways to work on being more well in the different areas of my life. And by pursuing that, I think that we get healthier. And by doing that, I think that everybody around us gets a little bit healthier too. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much.